Quentin Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is a film that revels in its own nostalgia, draping itself in the golden hues of 1969 Los Angeles, while meandering through nearly 3 hours of indulgence. It presents itself as a love letter to a bygone era, a tribute to old Hollywood, and a revisionist fantasy that rewrites one of the most infamous crimes in American history. However, beneath its glossy aesthetic, the film struggles with a sluggish narrative, an overabundance of self-indulgent filmmaking, and an ending that abruptly reminds the audience that they are, in fact, watching a Tarantino movie. At the center of the film is Rick Dalton, played by Leonardo DiCaprio, a fading TV actor who embodies the anxieties of irrelevance. His biggest crisis is his dwindling fame, which results in prolonged scenes of self-pity, alcoholic breakdowns, and frustrated attempts to prove he still has what it takes. As a protagonist, Rick's greatest challenge is forgetting his lines on a Western TV show, which, in the grand scheme of things, does not create the high stakes necessary to sustain an engaging narrative. Yet the film expects audiences to deeply empathize with his plight, despite the fact that the only thing truly at risk is his fragile ego. Then, there is Cliff Booth, played by Brad Pitt, Rick's stunt double, personal assistant, and possible wife murderer. Unlike Rick, Cliff is unbothered by his declining career and moves through life with effortless cool, dispatching hippies and beating up Bruce Lee along the way. His character arc, however, lacks complexity, as he never truly faces consequences for his actions. Instead, Tarantino portrays him as a laid-back hero, despite the dark undertones of his past. The film even introduces the idea that he may have murdered his wife, only to brush it off with a smirk and never revisit it. Pitt's charisma keeps the character watchable, but there is little beneath the surface beyond his charm. Margot Robbie's Sharon Tate is another puzzling aspect of the film. Despite being one of the most well-known figures associated with the Manson family tragedy, she has very little to do. Most of her screen time is dedicated to sequences of her smiling, walking, and watching her own movie. While Tarantino has claimed this was an intentional decision to portray her as a symbol of innocence rather than a victim, the result is a character that feels underdeveloped and secondary in a story that was, at least in part, marketed around her presence.
Breaking news.
The plot, or lack thereof, is where Once Upon a Time in Hollywood truly falters. Much of the film consists of characters driving around Los Angeles, engaging in mundane conversations, and indulging in Hollywood references that only die-hard cinephiles will appreciate. The pacing drags through endless sequences of Rick lamenting his career and Cliff engaging in aimless adventures. While Tarantino's dialogue is typically one of his strengths, this time it feels more self-indulgent than engaging. The Manson family is introduced but kept mostly in the background, making their presence feel more like an afterthought than a looming threat. Then, in the final 15 minutes, Tarantino suddenly remembers that he is known for explosive, violent climaxes, and the film shifts gears entirely. The slow-burn storytelling is thrown out the window, replaced by a bloodbath in which Cliff and his dog brutally dispatch the Manson killers, and Rick Dalton torches a home invader with a flamethrower. It is a shocking, over-the-top conclusion that seemingly exists just to remind the audience that this is, in fact, a Tarantino film. While some may find the rewriting of history cathartic, the execution feels unearned after nearly 3 hours of meandering buildup. Ultimately, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is less a cohesive story, and more of a nostalgic fantasy. One where Tarantino gets to indulge in his love for classic cinema, while rewriting history in the most absurd way possible. While it boasts strong performances, stunning cinematography, and an undeniable sense of style, it lacks the gripping narrative and sharp momentum that define Tarantino's best work. For those who love old Hollywood and don't mind a meandering runtime, it may be an enjoyable ride. But for anyone expecting a tightly woven story with meaningful stakes, it may feel more like a self-indulgent detour than a compelling film. Thanks for watching. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Quirky Critic signing out.